Hi YouTube, Watchify here with another video. In this video I'm going to go over a bit of an unfair comparison with putting this inexpensive Casio Marlin quartz diver up against this Seiko Samurai Prospex diver. The Samurai costs over $400 new currently, while the Casio only costs $60, so I'd like to explore what you really get for paying over 7 times more for a 200 meter diver and whether it's worth it. In a basic sense, they both tell time just fine. That of course is their core function. If anything, the Casio Marlin is going to be far more accurate due to its quartz movement. So I think the car analogy might apply here. If you take an inexpensive Chevy model, for example, and compare it to a far more expensive Acura, you'd find that both are going to get you from point A to point B just fine. It's the details and differences like engines and interior, for example, and even the brand name that influence the cost and make you decide whether it's worth paying more for one over the other. Both these watches provide a dive style look. They both have a rotating unidirectional 120 click bezel, a screw down crown, screw down case back, loom on the dial and hands, and both have a water resistance of 200 meters. For many, this Casio Marlin is going to be all they'll ever need in a dive watch. So with the Casio, like I mentioned, you get a battery-powered quartz movement. This means the watch is always going to be ticking, accurate to plus or minus 15 seconds a month, with the trade-off being that you'll have to replace the inexpensive battery every 2 or 3 years. The Seiko has an automatic movement that only has a 41-hour power reserve. This means that if you don't wear the watch for a couple days, when you grab it, you'll need to either manually wind or shake it, and then you'll need to set the time and date. Let's say you wear the watch daily. Well, you'll still have to eventually need to adjust the time since the stated accuracy is plus 45 to minus 35 seconds a day. In reality, it's almost always better than this, so let's say it's 15 seconds a day fast. This means over the course of a week, it's going to be off by almost 2 minutes unless you're savvy enough to open the watch and regulate the movement yourself. The benefit of an automatic movement is that you don't ever have to worry about changing a battery. However, over the course of its lifetime, you may need to get the movement serviced. For many in the watch enthusiast community, the mechanical nature of an automatic movement watch is appealing in itself, and they might look down on owning a watch with a simple quartz movement. The case finishing is another area where you might see a difference in these two watches, but honestly, both seem okay to me. It's not like the Casio's finishing is horrible. They obviously have different shaped cases, with the Seiko being their own angular design and the Casio being a more commonly seen shape. The case back on the Seiko is nicer with its polished wave logo versus the Casio's plainer industrial look, but here one might say that the case back is never seen when wearing the watch. The bezel action is where we begin to see a tangible quality difference. The Casio's is stiff and ratchety sounding, while the Seiko's is smoother. How much does this really matter, and how often are you going to be rotating the bezel though? The bezel insert on this particular Samurai is ceramic, which is supposed to be less prone to scratches, and it just overall looks better. The Casio's is regular aluminum. It still looks fine though, just not as premium looking as the Seiko's. Both crowns are unsigned, but the Seiko's crown design stands out versus the Casio's safe looking design. The loom quality is another difference on these two watches. Seiko's famous for their loom brightness and longevity, and this Samurai doesn't disappoint. The Casio's loom is at the opposite end of the spectrum and is not as bright and dims pretty quickly. To me, loom is important, so in this case I'm going to say that you're getting better quality by paying more. The dials on these two watches differ in that on the more expensive Seiko you have a grid pattern dial, and on this Casio you just have a basic black dial with some finishing seen radiating out from the center of the dial. The indices on the Seiko look to be applied where I think the indices on the Casio are just pushed through. The hands on the Seiko are unique to that brand, while the Casios are more commonly shaped. You'll get a smoother seconds hand sweep with the automatic Seiko, while you'll see the tick-tick motion on the Casio due to its quartz movement. On this Seiko, you get a sapphire crystal with the cyclops over the date window. On the Casio, you get a regular flat mineral crystal. Sapphire is considered an upgrade due to its scratch resistance, and it does cost more to manufacture. So this is another possible justification for its increased cost over the Casio. If worn daily, my guess is the Casio crystal would eventually pick up some scratches. How much that bothers you depends on the person. Some people actually like their watch to show some signs of wear and consider it a sign of character. I'm not really going to spend too much time on the straps that these watches come with, since I don't have the resin strap that came with the Casio anymore. But just know that the Seiko silicone strap is more comfortable, and it has a metal keeper and more substantial buckle. Third-party straps don't really cost that much, so I'm not going to knock the Casio too much for having an inferior strap out of the box. So when you add it all up, is the ceramic crystal and bezel insert upgrade, better loom and dial, better bezel action, and having an automatic movement worth the extra $400? I think the X factor here is also brand name. I think in the watch world, many people are going to consider the Seiko brand as being more prestigious than the Casio, at least in terms of the Marlin model, and would be willing to pay more for it. But at the end of the day, both are fine watches and perform their intended function. I think both are going to last a very long time also. On wrist, both look nice, and unless you come across a watch aficionado or someone stops and asks you, most people won't even be aware of the brand of your watch. It could be that the person who chooses the Marlin does so because they would rather spend that extra money on other things rather than a single watch. On the other hand, things are priced according to what consumers will pay for it, so if the Seiko Samurai's price was out of line, no one would be buying that watch. This Seiko is an ISO rated diver while the Casio is not, and to some that's a significant distinction. Whether that and the other differences mentioned is enough to justify the price difference is of course up to each consumer to decide. Well, that's it for this video. Hopefully you found it helpful or interesting, and if you did, feel free to leave a like, comment, or even consider subscribing. I wanted to of course thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in another video.